Emmy. Welcome to the Passionate Life TV. How are you?
I'm great, Jane. How are you going?
Yeah, good, good. It's been a great day for me today, and I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yeah, me too. I think it's great. I love what you're doing here with your interview. So I'm really excited to be part of it.
So let's introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners on the call.
Cool. Thank you. My name is Emmy Petersson. I'm a relocation mindset specialist, and my business is called the Bridge EC Relocation. So what I do is I help people who are going to move overseas or interstate, and I work with them in my program to help them emotionally land on the other side of the move and feel nice and safe and comfortable and happy. Because we all know that moving can be very, very stressful for some people, especially, if you go with a family or your partner or a couple of people. And I've been an expat myself for almost 13 years now. I've got quite a lot of experience under my belt.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. And Emmy, when did you come to Australia?
I came here in 2010 as a traveller, and originally I only planned to stay for about a year. And ironically, I fell in love with this country and later on with an Australian man. And that's how I've now been here for just over 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your first sort of feelings or emotion when you first arrived? Were you excited? Were you nervous? What was it like?
Well, I think I was fairly excited when I first got here because for me, coming to Australia was a bit of an adventure. I was in my late 20s, so I was quite old for a backpacker. I just sort of, went away on this adventure with my friend, and the whole plan was to come back to Europe after 12 months and get it out of my system.
Yeah.
And that just never really happened. I didn't get it out of my system. I was very excited. The first 12 months in Australia was a lot of fun, a lot of traveling around and exploring. And I think for me, the challenges came a bit later on for me when I realized, oh my goodness, I'm actually considering staying here because being Swedish originally, I'm literally on the other side of the globe from a lot of my family.
Yeah. And what was it like being away from family? I imagine it'd be so hard.
It comes and goes. I think my family and I developed, because I've been away for so long now, we've developed a lot of things. So we Skype very often, we text message very often. I actually, in a way, feel more connected to them now because we all make a bigger effort to stay in touch and really connect with each other and congratulate each other when something goes well and support each other when you're not feeling all that great. But I guess the biggest challenge for me has been those times when you just want a hug from your mum, and geographically the hug's a little bit too far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand how you feel because I came here when I was 14 and being with family, I reckon probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. And like you said, especially when there's time where you sort of really need that hug or time where you just want to celebrate the moments.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really challenging.
Yeah.
And has this been the same with your client as well, that the lack of the emotional support has been one of the challenge for people moving away from home?
Yeah, a lot of clients come to me with a variety of things, but the most common themes are that people feel guilty for moving away to follow their dream and leaving friends and family and loved ones behind. Especially a lot of women struggle with challenges that they take their children with them overseas, and grandma and grandpa can't build the same physical relationship that they would if the kids were there. A lot of people struggle with overall feeling that the people who stay behind don't fully understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
And that's what I work a lot with, because I think it's so important to feel grounded in your decision, and that loving someone else and being there for someone else has nothing to do with where you are geographically at all. I mean, the hug is probably the only thing that can be teleported, but everything else, like sending little flowers, sending little messages of support, sharing your experience, all that stuff can happen. I mean, in the modern world, everything's electronic. You can, talk to someone for free for as long as you like. So it's It's pretty extraordinary. Imagine back in the days when people went on the boats and it took like months and months and months to come to another continent. It's very, very different now.
I remember when I first came here, like it was so hard to even have the internet because we have dial-up internet back then, and it just took forever. And and you sort of see the webcam, and then the picture just froze. Like, oh my god, where did you go?
Yeah.
I remember calling back home was so expensive. It was like $4 or $5 a minute. So you sort of go, "Hi, Mum, I love you. Bye," sort of hang up because you just can't. I couldn't afford to have a conversation which can last an hour.
No.
So it was, for me, it was a big, big time to cope with the emotions. So it would be a great advice for people who are about to relocate, whether with or without their loved ones. What do they need to prepare for?
With your loved ones, I would say it always starts with you as the individual. So the most important thing is to be really clear on why you're choosing to move and what you want to get out of it. So because when you are clear on that, you can then cascade that certainty and that stability to the people that you love and assure them that they are still very much important to you. So what I always recommend for my clients to do is to identify their big why. If it's a lifestyle change, if it's work, if it's exploring, whatever it is, and to get really clear on why you're choosing to move. And what can also be really good is to have a bit of a plan of how long you're going to be away, because sometimes people go for a year like I did to explore, and sometimes they go permanently, and then there is anything in between. So get really clear on why you're going. And then also the second step is to understand that other people are basing their judgment on what you're doing based on what they've experienced. So, for example, if you've got a family member or a loved one who has never traveled or never moved to another country, they couldn't possibly identify with exactly what you've decided to do. So it's so important to understand them, seek to understand them first, and you'll find that you'll get taken care of in the process as well. If you choose to understand them and go, look, Mum, I can see that this is really challenging for you and you're afraid that we're going to lose our intimate connection because I'm going to be away. But I can assure you that we'll still talk on the phone and we'll still have the same catch-ups every week, only that they'll be on the screen instead of sitting at your table. When you've addressed that, people, it's kind of like you've deflated the balloon and people go, oh, okay, well, she really gets me. I can now start to, stop worrying and start going, I wonder what it is that they're going to do and how exciting for them and that sort of stuff. So that would be my first thing to advise people to do up front.
And I imagine for couples, because I work with couples who have in the past moved for just to be with their partner or with the family, and they face challenges, the stuff that bring up that they feel like they have to give up their whole life here or somewhere else to move to another country and to start again. And it's because they do it because of love, but they couldn't help that in the long process that they feel like a part of them was missing. So what would be a great advice to give them to deal with a situation like that?
It's another version of the why, but to do it together. So basically what I advise couples who move together or separately, it's always to sit down and brainstorm the big why so that you both agree that we're doing this because we love each other, we want to be together, we're going to live in this country for about this long. And then get really clear, it's kind of like getting buy-in, if it's going to be, it's a bit like if you were both rowing a boat, right? And you're rowing different directions, the boat's not going to get very far. But if you kind of get in the boat and agree as a team that, okay, this is going to be challenging sometimes, and I feel this way and you feel that way, but how are we going to overcome that together? What's my responsibility? What's your responsibility? And what's our joint responsibility? Because every single person has a responsibility in the situation to make it the best that it can be. And I see so many couples in relocation, and I used to be one of them. I've moved myself many times in a couple, and it's actually very, very challenging. And the moment that the blame game starts of you did, he said, or I'm here because of you, that's just redundant. It's not a conversation that's worth having if you love someone. So it's a lot about overcoming feeling of guilt, or that feeling of I'm not getting to be me. You do get to be you. You just need to agree together on why you're doing this and what it's going to give you. And it's a hard conversation to have, but any brave couple who are serious about being together and being loving to each other, it's one worth having. Absolutely.
And I also think that, adding on to that, I think it's important that once you make the decision to move, that it's become a fresh start, that you do not bring up, I've done this for you, what have you done for me? So that they can prevent that in case that they have an argument, they can bring up a lot of this stuff. And it's really important for a couple, I think, to, when they move to another country, to have a fresh start. And to find a new identity for themselves as well. I think that's also another challenge when it comes to relocation, is that you feel like you have to find yourself again. You move to another country, you don't have any friends, any family here, you're not familiar with anything. It's a new territory. Yeah. It's about really finding who you are in that zone. It's crucially important as well.
Absolutely. And the thing is, what many people feel, and it doesn't matter so much if you're a man or a woman, excuse me, but when you move to another place and you used to have, like, I find a lot of people, they used to have a certain job before in the country back home, and then they move to the new place and their circumstances change a lot. So maybe they don't have to work anymore, or maybe they can't find work for a little while. And a lot of people's identity, like you say, is so wrapped up in the things we do every day. Yep. So what it does is that it challenges people, both as an individual and in the couple, that they need to start expanding that and going, well, who am I and what am I about? Yeah. I'm not just an accountant or a masseur or whatever it is that you do in your day-to-day stuff, but you're a person, and you're a person in this relationship. So, and I choose to sort of turn it around as well. I was speaking to a client a few months ago who had huge challenges in the relationship. And I just sort of said, well, why don't you get playful with it? If you have a chance to completely resketch what you guys are all about, like you've got a blank canvas in front of you, what would you do? And the person just went, wow, I've never thought of it that way. I never thought of it. I thought of it more as I'm giving up who I am. And I said, well, you're not really. You're taking all those bits of you and reinventing yourself to the next level. It's amazing.
What a beautiful way to think about, because I think a lot of it is we carry so much baggage with us and we think that's all that we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember when I first came here, I thought, oh my God, I feel so lonely. I was 14 at the time, didn't know any English at all. So for me, it was a big challenge. And I think now that I know about what I've been through, relocation is still a big thing for me. But I know that once I put in a plan and I can sort of prepare myself emotionally, I think that's a big key. That to bring the certainty with me when I go somewhere else, that knowing that I'm capable of surviving, of adapting, and of making things happen whenever I go. I think it's one of the most important key for me going anywhere.
Absolutely. And that's what I say to all my clients at the end of each session. It's basically, you've got this. You know how to do this. There are some unfamiliar things you haven't experienced before, but you've got this one. And all you got to do is believe that you can and reach out to the right people for support. And I mean, especially the expat and the relocation community is so helpful that if you put a question out in a blog or in a forum, you get a gazillion answers in like 2 seconds of people going, I've been there, I did that, I can help you. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's about acknowledging that there are challenges there, but seeing all the opportunities as well, and the beautiful chance to actually once and for all leave baggage behind, both physically and emotionally, and only bring the things you actually need with you.
Mm.
And that's one of my key passions and why I do what I do, because a lot of people think that moving overseas, and a lot of businesses see it this way as well, moving overseas is just about packing your stuff and getting on with the list and going to the other side. But there's so much more to it. And there's so many people that I've spoken to who suffered in silence through so many relocations and so many months of homesickness and identity crisis and culture shock. And there is a great way around it, and I just wish more people knew about it.
Mm. So what would be your 3 top tips for people who move, to another country, another state, and feeling really lonely and isolated? How would you advise them to cope with the loneliness?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that, because I had a seminar on this last night. The 3 key steps I normally say to people is, firstly, be your own best friend.
Mm.
If you're going somewhere else, and the certainty that you talked about just a moment ago, Jane, is you need to be your own best friend to be able to attract other good friends. So
Yeah.
I always set my clients a little challenge, and that is, every night when you go to bed, think about the day that's just been, and ask yourself, did I do something really kind or really friendly to look after myself today?
Mm.
And it can be a big thing or a small thing. It can be, I made myself a beautiful lunch salad, or it can be, I had a moment to judge myself, but instead I chose to accept that that's just the way things are, or something like that. So be your own best friend first, because if you're not your own best friend, you'll be portraying insecurity and, all these other things. Your baggage is a lot more visible to other people than we like to think.
Yeah.
We think that we're all this facade of, clarity, and it's all hidden underneath. But in reality, our whole body language and what we portray is, it just shows who we are. And even if we don't like to believe that, it is true. So be your own best friend first. That's advice number 1. The second one is to get really clear on what kind of people you'd like to meet. Because the way out of loneliness is meeting other people, right?
Mm.
So if you're a good friend to yourself and you sit down and you kind of go, so my best friends that I've had in the past, what's been great about them? What do they do? What do they say? How do they make me feel?
Mm.
And start to build this picture in your mind of this great friend that's, supportive and loving and nurturing and energetic, or whatever it is. And get really clear on the person that you do want to meet. And you'd find it's so interesting, and I just tell my clients it's the process, because they do come back to me after a few weeks and go, oh my God, I was at the park and I met the person that I had visualized. And I said, there you go, because you set the intention of what you actually want to attract.
Yeah.
And lastly, reach out. The third advice is reach out to people. Talk to people at the gym, join a social group. If you're the creative kind of person, join a pottery class, whatever it is. Just actively get out and do stuff. Because when we sit at home and mull over all the things that are not great, it's easy to start living in that mindset, and it's not really going to help you feel any better.
Mm.
So I always say, reach out, connect in social circles, go networking. If there's a networking group near you, expat forums, Facebook groups, just reach out to people and say, hey, I'm new in town, want to grab a coffee? Or, I'd love to buy some new shoes, which is the best shoe shop? And then all the ladies will start commenting and helping each other out. So the key thing is just ask the question. Because if you imagine yourself, if you were at the gym and you had a few hours to kill in your afternoon, and someone came up and said, hey, I'm new in town and I'd love to find the best coffee shop in this area. Could you tell me where it is?
Yeah.
I mean, most people will be like, oh, actually, I've got half an hour. Would you like to grab a coffee? So just ask. Just reach out.
I think tip number 3 for me, it's probably the most crucial ones, because it's so easy to just sit on the couch and and be upset or feeling like, oh my God, the whole world left me. Or reach out and connect with the whole world and know that we all connected in some way or the other.
Yeah.
And, they talk about 6 degrees of separation, that the other person we meet is just right out there. So they'll be reaching out and allow us to be vulnerable. I think that's probably one of the challenge for many people who've been overseas, and they feel like they have to put a big shield, around them so that they don't get hurt when they reach out for support or they reach out for connection. But that's also prevent them from building true relationship or true connection with those that they want the most.
Absolutely.
Asking for help is not always something that's easier for many people to do.
No.
But I think at the end of the day, I truly believe that we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And we're not in any way perfect. We are, but we have our own flaws and imperfection. It's okay to be seen. And I think to connect with other people, like-minded people, to have support is a phenomenal thing to do.
It is. And to add to, I agree with everything you just shared then, and to add to that as well is, if you have relationship problems in your relocation, share that with people, because there seems to be this sort of stigma around, oh, you shouldn't talk about your relationship with new people, and obviously you don't want to come across as the person who complains or that sort of stuff. But when it comes to authentic sharing from heart and saying, look, I love my husband dearly, but we've had these challenges lately and I'm just not sure how to cope with it. And be honest with people back home if you've got good friends there. Because I see a lot of couples especially sit there and hold their pride and say, this relocation is not a failure. It's great. It's great. It's really good all the time. And I normally ask the piercing question of, really? And they go, actually, no, this and this is not great. And at the moment I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z. And I always say, well, how come you've chosen not to share that with someone until now? And they go, well, I was ashamed. I was ashamed that we couldn't deal with it. I was ashamed that I'm sitting here in this beautiful home in this beautiful country, and yet there's something missing in our relationship. And I think it's so important to not only talk to each other in the relationship and pull each other up and say, hey, remember before we went and we agreed that this is what we were going to do. You're not really holding up your end of the bargain. We need to, regroup here. But secondly, talk to people about it. There are so many groups. You can share even anonymously if you like and say, this is the challenge I have. Has anyone else had it? And if so, how did you overcome it? Suffering in silence is, it's sad, but it's so many people do it.
It's a horrible thing. And I think not talking just the relationship within relocation, but relationships overall as well. Because sometimes we feel ashamed to talk about the fact that things aren't going so well. And relationship is not something that people openly talk about all the time. They only choose to talk to people they choose to trust. And sometimes it's hard because the people that closest to you may not give you the best advice. They do care and love you, but they may not give you the best support in a way that can help you move forward. And
I agree.
I see it all the time. And I agree that reaching out for help is probably one of the best things you can do in any areas of lives.
And that's the thing. I mean, how are we meant to, if we're facing a new situation that we've never been in before, how are we meant to have all the answers to that if we haven't experienced it? I mean, there's such a wealth of knowledge out there in the world. People have walked your path before you. And even if your solution is not exactly their solution, to just be able to share with someone who's been there and knowing that I'm not the only one who's felt this way or had this challenge, it's so liberating. And then when the cat's out of the bag and you've been able to say out loud, well, yeah, it's not great, then you can start doing something about it. And that's where it gets really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Because when you see in the problems and all you can see is problems and you feel so ashamed, then you add up another layer of shame and guilt. And then you feel more frustrated and more unfulfilled. And then you just sort of, live in this problem swamp. Just you actually allow yourself to see the possibility that things don't have to be in a certain way and that you can always find solutions to the challenges you have, and find the person that can give you the best support, in all ways, and go out and reach out and find that mentor, find that person that can coach you through. What you're saying with relocation, a lot of people just talk to their friends and family, but then issues that deeper that need to be dealt with. And finding the expert in the field to help them cope with that is probably one of the best things they can give to themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, in a way, for some clients that I meet, and you've probably had a similar experience, it's actually easier to talk to a third party that has no prior knowledge of who you are and what your story is and all that stuff, because sometimes the whole story doesn't really matter so much. Sometimes what matters is we've got a challenge right now. There might be some triggers from the past, but here are some great strategies how to do it instead. And that's what I love about helping my clients, and you probably love about working with your clients, is the fact that change happens in the moment when someone decides this isn't good enough. This isn't good enough, and I love my husband, I love my wife, I want us to have an amazing relationship wherever we live in the world. And how can we get that? And that's when you reach out to people who can help you overcome those challenges and actually build your own relationship from within. And it's just beautiful when it happens. It's like, gives me goosebumps.
And, is any other tips, any notes you want to add to that before we wrap up? Because I think, it's just been so valuable that, your insights and your knowledge and expertise. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up, Emmy?
I would just, like we've said the whole call through, ask for help, reach out, talk to other people. And just because you've done something one way before doesn't mean that that is the way in the future. Yep. So explore different ways of doing things, because sometimes we are creatures of habit and we tend to do things the same way, whether that's a relationship or a move or searching for a job. And sometimes we just need to lift our gaze a little bit and actually look at the options and find out that maybe there is a better way, and maybe I don't have to suffer in silence. Maybe there is a much quicker way to start enjoying things. So that would be my key advice to anyone who's facing a big change.
And if people want to contact you for help or support, where would they find you, Emmy?
So the easiest way is to hop on my website, which is thebridgecoaching.com.au, and find me there. I've got my contact details. I've got a relocation blog, and I regularly do video books and stuff as well. So there's lots of free, really valuable relocation content on the website.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for spending time on the call and giving us so much value. And
thank you.
I'm looking forward to having you back again, and we can talk about a different angle more specifically and answer any questions if people actually read this blog and want to have some questions specifically to their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for creating this video series and for having me today. It was a blast. I love hanging out with you.
Yeah, likewise, and me. All right, thank you. Have a great day.
You too, hon. See ya. Bye-bye.